One of the great things about making these videos and reflecting back on my learning process is that I'm able to share with you things that would have really sped me up, things that would have really saved me a lot of time and really put me on a good path in my learning. That's what today's video is all about. I want to tell you 3 things that I wish I had known on day 1 of starting to paint watercolor. The first thing that I wish I had known when I was getting started is that watercolor requires a clear plan. I'm talking about an order of operation. I would look at a painting that I liked and I would have no idea how to take this on, what to do first, what to do second, and what to do third. Let's talk about that. What type of plan do we want to have before we go into our painting? Now, watercolor, because it's different than other mediums, we are typically painting from light to dark. And because this is the case, we need to have a plan as we move through the process. Let's talk about the 3-step process for painting a watercolor painting. And we'll break up this process into painting lights, midtones, and darks. So in the first wash of our painting, as we look at the scene, we want to think about the lightest values all over the scene. And I have to remember, in this 3-step process, every step you take is setting up the next step. So we're almost painting in reverse in this process: lights, midtones, and darks. After you've painted a wash that covers all of your paper, you've laid in the lightest values of your scene. So after this dries, then you want to paint your middle values. And that's where the large connected shape comes into play. So then I go through and I paint this large connected shape over the top of the lightest values that I've already painted. And after you are done with that, you get into phase 3, which is where we paint the darks and the details of the scene. And this is the fun part. This is where all the hard work that you've put into the painting so far, with the planning and the drawing and the light values and the middle values, this is where all of that work pays off. The light in the scene really becomes apparent because we don't get to see what the final painting is going to look like until we get in the darks of the scene. So then I carefully go around the scene and I paint the darks and the details, the finishing touches of the scene. From day 1, I wasn't aware of any process, let alone a 3-step process. So that's the 3-step process that I use now that I wish I had known all the way back when I was first getting started. Because it's so easy to look at a scene and just try to copy what you see. But if you don't understand how the painting was assembled, how it was put together in stages, then you're never going to be able to get that final output that you're looking for. That leads me to point number 2. I wish I had understood values early on in my painting. I kind of went the other way. I spent more time focusing on other things, color mixing, so many other things before I even understood what values were or how important they are. But let's review this really quick. Values are simply how light or how dark something is, and how these different shades of strength relate to each other. You take away color from an amazing painting or an amazing photograph, and if the values are sound, you still have a very strong evocative image, because values are more important than color. And that's something I wish I had understood from day 1. So if you're just getting started, consider working more in black and white before you ever even think about mixing colors. And here's a look at some value studies where I'm just working in black and white and understanding the relationship between the lights and the midtones and the darks of the scene. Now, this is work that I am still doing. I still do value studies, not before every painting, but before a lot of paintings, because as I mature as an artist, I still have to lean into this to work on seeing the connections, to work on grouping and seeing the values. And all that happens when I take the time to focus on values before I even think about color. And that's something that I wish I was able to do when I was first starting watercolor, is to understand how important values are and prioritize that over the color of the scene. And the third thing that I wish I had known before I started is to take so much focus off of output. And when I say output, I mean the final painting. We put so much pressure on ourselves, I know I did, even early on, and I still do sometimes, to really get that finished painting. I tie so much of my ability as an artist to come up with a good finished painting, when really, if I could zoom out and have a longer perspective on things, the final paintings that I come up with is not the most important thing. The most important thing is to keep coming back, to keep practicing, to keep showing up, and focusing more on my dedication to learning than what the final painting looks like. And if we can kind of turn that mindset a little bit more towards consistency rather than output, that's when we really start to progress. And think of painting as a long-term investment. Every time you show up, every time you practice, every time you put in effort, you are making little deposits into the bank. And that really adds up over time. And that's what I wish I had focused on when I was first learning. You know, watercolor is not an easy medium to learn. No medium is simple. But when you're really trying to figure things out, it can get very frustrating because your output is just not going to look like you want it to look like. And so if you can stay focused and stay determined and keep showing up, and to paint small and often, and don't get so tied to the output, the final painting, rather find your worth in the consistency that you bring to your practice, that is where you will start to grow, you will continue to show up, and you will make big strides if you can switch that focus from output to consistency. Now, if you are ready to take the next step in your painting, I have a free video lesson for you, the 7 secrets of fresh and powerful painting. In this video lesson, I show you how to plan out your painting, how to mindfully paint your scene, and how to put your brush down before you overwork your painting, much like what we're talking about today. Now, after you sign up for this free lesson, I send you 2 things. The first is a pre-painting checklist, and you can use this checklist before every painting to ensure that you are on the right track and thinking through the right things. The next thing I send you is my watercolor supplies guide. If you have questions about paper, about pigments, about any of the supplies that I use, I answer all those questions in my watercolor supplies guide. If you're ready to take your next big step as a painter, all you have to do is click on this link here and watch my free lesson, The 7 Secrets of Fresh and Powerful Painting. I'll see you there.